Hi everybody, and welcome to our shoulder module for the 300-hour yoga teacher training. There's a hip module attached to this weekend as well, but first we're going to attack the shoulders. And I know that we go over shoulders, or you should have gone over shoulder alignment and shoulder anatomy in 200 hours, but what my darshan dilemmas is that I see these crazy things going on in classes all the time, and teachers aren't correcting their students, and it's a very important thing to do. There's a lot of injuries that are happening now in particularly the shoulder area, and let's talk about that. This is my darshan dilemma. I have unstable shoulders. I've had them since I was a child, and I've suffered through class, and I eventually had to have surgery on my shoulders. So as my experience as your teacher, I want you to avoid that suffering. Yoga is about not suffering. So when we place our Western sensibilities and our Western mentality upon a yoga class, it's too much, it's too hard, let's do it, let's kick somebody's ass. It's no longer yoga. You're busting their shoulders. So one, let's look at the anatomy of the shoulder and revisit what the shoulder girdle is. Actually, it's a ball and socket. It's classified as a ball and socket joint, right? It's a synovial joint. We know that. But the glenoid is shallow. It almost acts as a shelf, and the acromion process goes right over it. So there's not a lot of stability in this area. The ligaments that attach the humerus, right, to inside the glenoid are very long and thin and band-like structures. They give us this mobility, this 360-degree range of motion that we can get in our shoulders. It's a wonderful thing, and we can have fun with it, but we also damage this area when we compress, and this is compressive cumulative stress that I see in sequencing all the time. Yeah? So let's talk about how we can avoid this kind of damage to our students, and how we can avoid that is by teaching them proper alignment. And when we don't do that, we're not doing our job. So I know we're at the 300-hour level, but I'll tell you that I could walk into any class and I'll see heads of the bone facing downward to the ground while the elbows are sticking straight up and out in Chaturanga Dandasana, and no one says anything. So let's talk about that for a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit from an essay from Julie Gumstead. She's always published in the Yoga Journal. I've given a copy to you in your study guide. And so she's saying, you've probably heard 1,000,000 times that you should externally rotate your shoulders in Adho Mukha Svanasana. It's downward dog. If you thought that was just your yoga teacher nitpicking, it's time to reconsider. Learning to engage and strengthen the rotator cuff muscle is crucial to preventing common shoulder injuries that plague yogis and non-yogis alike. If you know how to use these muscles the right way, your down dogs can help keep your shoulders strong and healthy for a lifetime. The rotator cuff is one of the most important but widely misunderstood structures in our body. It gets damaged often enough that its name has become synonymous with injury. It's a group of 4 shoulder muscles that surround each shoulder, like a cuff. Boiled down to the essential, its job is to protect and position the ball that forms the head of the upper arm bone and fits in the socket of the shoulder joint. The shoulder is inherently an unstable joint, so building the strength of these supporting muscles is crucial. If they're weak or deconditioned, as is often the case, the shoulder is vulnerable to injury and pain, and the rotator cuff itself might tear. You can remember the 4 rotator cuff muscles by the acronym SITS: subscapularis, infraspinatus, teres minor, and supraspinatus. They all originate on the scapula and insert on the humerus, near the humeral head, right? So the names of these 3 muscles give you a clue to their location. The subscapularis sits under the scapula, between the ribs and in the front of the scapula. The supraspinatus sits above, and infraspinatus sits below the spine of the scapula. You can feel them with your fingers. So you can touch one of your collarbones with the fingers of the opposite hand and slide the fingers straight up over the top of the shoulder, then reach down back about an inch or two and you'll find the ridge of the bone. That's more or less parallel to the ground. That's the spine of the scapula, which separates the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus on the back surface of the scapula. The teres minor gives you no clue about its name. It just sits on the outer edge of the scapula near the posterior fold of your armpit. While all four muscles work in concert to stabilize the shoulder, each muscle also helps support the shoulder individually. The subscapularis is a powerful internal rotator. Supraspinatus helps hold the ball up in its socket against the downward pull of gravity on the arm, and it initiates abduction, or lifting the arm up from your side, like in Virabhadrasana 2. Teres minor and infraspinatus are the primary muscles that control the external rotation of the shoulder. When they're strong and healthy, they help to protect the shoulder joint by positioning the ball in the socket while you raise your arms overhead. Conversely, their weakness can contribute to common shoulder problems such as shoulder impingement, tendinitis, and bursitis. These important external rotators, infraspinatus and T minor, are the part of the rotator cuff that is strengthened in downward dog. It's a good thing too, because these days the labor-saving products and devices we make use of our arms and shoulders progressively weaker as the decades slip by. A weakened rotator cuff might lead to abnormal shoulder movement patterns, which can contribute to inflammation and pain. Not only that, but weak muscles are likely to tear when you put a load on them that they aren't strong enough to handle. Sometimes the tears are microscopic and will heal on their own. But if the tears are bigger, a surgeon may have to sew the separated ends of the torn tissues together. And that's not an easy task for a surgeon, because it's like the tendons are flimsy, so it's not an easy task for them, and definitely not an easy thing for the person to go through. So the external rotators take some time to engage in some people. So you really want to feel the engagement of the external rotators. You could understand, this is one thing that how I learned that, and I'm going to put my papers down. So when my elbows are inward, right, or more inward, my shoulder is an external rotation. When my elbows go out, my shoulders are going in internal rotation. So the proper alignment for a downward dog is not internal rotation. The proper alignment for a downward dog is internal rotation with pronation of the hands and the arm. So this is what I want you to practice. I want you to practice feeling this external rotation of the shoulder with pronation of the hand. So we'll try that over and over again. Your assignments have been given to you in class, and I'll go over them again. We want to make sequences, and I want you to be able to explain to a student why the shoulder is such an unstable joint and understand the mechanics of the shoulder. So also, the things that I want you to think about in class are your own sequencing. So if we had plank, chaturanga, vashisthasana, plank, chaturanga, downward dog, plank, chaturanga, vashisthasana on the other side, chaturanga. That's cumulative stress placed on a joint. So we also, as teachers, need to think about how much stress am I placing on one joint at a time? And is it really necessary? So these are the discussions that I want to have with you. I'm also going to be showing you some shoulder strengtheners, some shoulder openers, some things we can do to strengthen and kind of awaken the shoulder. It's a very important place to work. Not a lot of asanas are just involving the shoulder, as in it's the main thing, but the shoulders are involved in all postures. Yeah. So This is something that's very important. We don't really feel, we don't have the awareness of where our rotator cuffs are. We can't even touch them or feel them. No one's ever taught us that. But now, since we have this information, again, if you haven't been taught this information, I want you to really think about the safety of our students and how we can prevent injury and how we can instead create strength and stability. Thanks.